Welcome to Jane Kennedy, the PCC for Liverpool. That's the Police and Crime Commissioner. Jane was previously the MP for Wavertree from 1992 to 2010. And having had several ministerial positions with the Blair government, retired in 2010, but subsequently was elected as the Police Commissioner in 2012. Was that October, Jane?
It was November. The election was in November.
And you did come in and talk to us when you were first elected. You were formulating it all then. I'm sure you've got more staff in place now and everything's more stable. How are things going? How would you say things are going as the Police Commissioner?
I feel better sighted on the challenges. I always knew that the finances were going to be difficult because the budget has been cut by 60 million since 2010. We've lost over 1,000 people. That's police officers, police and community support officers and staff. A massive challenge to the police, but it's great credit to them that with their partners, local authorities, the voluntary sector, probation service and others, they've continued working with the offenders on Merseyside so well and so effectively that crime continues to go down. There's some concern across England and Wales that is changing and that we're seeing an increase in some areas of England in shoplifting, the theft of food, theft from motor vehicles and so on. We're not yet seeing that as a trend here on Merseyside, but it's something we're very conscious of, and clearly you might conclude that those were crimes related to poverty. I don't think there's any excuse for crime, but these are all things that are factors that are affected by a general economic climate.
Okay. Now, just a couple of things I got from your website, which we will come locally in a moment. You signed a petition to Parliament about the Communications Bill. What was that? I couldn't quite work out whether you were in favour of it or asked him to stop it. I wasn't quite sure.
I joined with the vast majority of other police and crime commissioners in asking the government to progress with the bill. This is a bill that would give strengthened powers to the law enforcement agencies to intercept email communications and other social network communications that are not currently published and available. And it's quite controversial. There's a lot of anxiety around it. Some people argue that it's an infringement of civil liberties. What we are advised by the forces that we represent, and certainly the people who work within the Northwest combating terrorism and seized and organised crime, they tell me that this is an essential tool.
Isn't it that they're going to have access to people's emails and private texts? Is it texts or is it just emails?
It's texts and emails. When you put it like that, it sounds very intrusive. But the way it's worked in the past, they don't have general access to your telephone calls at the moment. If they want to listen to or ask for recordings of your telephone calls, they have to have a reason. They have to go to a judge and they have to justify that to a judge. Now, if it's the high end of risk, so you're talking about where there's suspicion that an individual is involved in terrorist activity, let's talk about that in particular because probably that's the most concern to the public, then I, as a representative of the people of Merseyside, want the police to be able to protect Merseyside. If they tell me that the advances in technology are so great that there's whole areas of communication that they are now completely blindfolded on, then I need to listen to them seriously. And it's my view that they need, so long as it is properly authorised and it is scrutinised by, if I would prefer judicial oversight, but there is oversight built into the bill.
Very problematical, that one, isn't it really? Yeah. Because, there's a lot of concern around councils using that against people, and you think, is it going to come down to the fact, tax authority, I think they probably can at the moment, actually, or at least come into your home, the tax authorities.
But they have to have just cause.
Yeah. I mean, can that be diluted? I think that's the thinking. It's a long, slippery road, isn't it?
And that's why you have people like me, and you have local authorities, and you have the press and media to make sure by scrutiny, and you have Parliament, the parliamentary committees that oversee the operation of the covert services and what they do. They don't operate completely unobserved. And that's what us as a wider society, that's our job. We have a really fine line to tread between protecting an individual's liberty, and that is precious and deserves protecting, but at the same time we have to protect their safety. And these days we've got to reflect upon the fact that there are sadly individuals out there who want to cause terror and spread mayhem.
Indeed, and I think most people would say, I mean, there's always the argument, isn't there, where, if you've got nothing to hide, why worry? But you don't like to think people are listening into your private conversations, do you? I mean, most people would object to that. But as you say, I think it probably needs looking at a bit closer for the average person to see what provisos are in there.
Yes, and I think that Parliament is scrutinising this bill at the moment. The government, it's a coalition proposal, but I think there's quite widespread support across all parties. There's equally quite widespread concern across all parties. So it's quite an interesting debate, and what I've done is express my view as a Commissioner of Police Services. If it's my responsibility to help keep Merseyside safe, working with the Chief Constable, then I've got to reflect that.
Of course, that's your job. But and just to touch on that very, very briefly, because it really isn't in your remit that I mention this, because you're a politician, is the lobbying as well, the lobbying bill that's going through, which is going to curtail, which of course affects the company or the social enterprise I'm involved with, community social enterprises from commenting in the year before an election, general election. Do you have any views about that?
I think it's really dangerous, and it is an attempt to stifle quite a significant group of voices, particularly those who might be critical of the decisions that a particular party has made in government. Again, this is an area where actually this is a well-trodden path. Organisations are very conscious of the fact that as voluntary and community organisations, whilst they depend for their funding in part on the public sector, on the government and on local authorities, so they are receiving taxpayers' money. At the same time, if they are providing a really critically important service, then to some degree they have a job to be an advocate for the people who receive that service. So for example, I met a group last week whose funding had stopped, and they were doing work training people coming out of prison, so offenders coming out of prison, training them in employment skills and employability to enable them to get work. Now that work has stopped because the funding has stopped, and albeit it's public money that provides the service, the fact that that organisation can no longer do it, are they going to be gagged? Are we going to say that they can't say anything about the fact that they can no longer do that work?
Yes, very. I think that's more problematic on the communications bill, to be honest. And it's come on the back of trying to stop the rich companies lobbying Parliament, which is very, very bizarre, really, in a way, that it's actually gone into that. I mean, some spotty Herbert somewhere probably thought, this is a good way of sort of stifling discontent, and I would imagine it's a Tory policy, is it, or a coalition policy?
I don't know. All I would say is that it is likely to be a political objective rather than an official who slipped that into a bill.
Okay, let's move on, because I know you're busy. The Pan Merseyside Safer Community Partnership has been established. You've done that since you've been in office, have you? Now, is that presumably with all the other authorities?
Yes, all 5 local authorities, that's Liverpool City Council, Wirral Borough Council, Sefton, Knowsley and St Helens. They all have their own community safety partnerships. I provide funding for them because the government gives the big grant of about 3.1 million. It came to me in November. I then provide that funding down to those local partnerships because they know best how to spend that money in their localities and in their neighbourhoods. However, because I'm accountable for that money, we meet as a group and we discuss not only the services that they're providing using that money, but much more widely we discuss crime trends, we discuss what factors are affecting their ability to work with the police. Because what I've said for years, the police can't achieve their objectives entirely on their own. They can't combat crime solely on their own. They're not simply an enforcement agency. There's a huge amount of work they can do to prevent crime. And in the end, that's what we're all trying to do, trying to reduce the numbers of victims. We're trying to protect people from crime. And there's one of the Peelian principles of policing, which was set by Robert Peel way back.
Wonderful word, Peelian.
Yeah, Peelian. And he set these principles, 12 principles, about 150 years ago. And one of those principles, he states that the effectiveness and success of policing is not the number of police officers, it's the number of crimes. And so if the police are working with other partners to reduce crime, if they're working with partners to stop people offending, if we're dealing with people who are addicted to drugs and alcohol in a different way other than simply putting them into prison when they commit crime, then we can make society as a whole a safer place.
And but the people, it's not just the councils, presumably there are all sorts of other agencies and social enterprises involved in that.
There are indeed. Obviously, organisations like the Probation Service, we've got housing associations represented at the partnerships. We have the health service now playing its full part as a partner sitting around the table. Because we've got local commissioning now of services, it's really important that we work with the health service. The drug treatment funds that the government provides, taxpayers' money that comes to the health service, is monitored alongside the funds that come to the police to make sure that we are working as effectively as we can with people who've got...
And they will bring their concerns to you, and then the police go away, presumably, and think about them and try and factor them into their approach.
Absolutely. And sometimes it works the other way. So, for example, we recently did some work with the health service, a lot of concern from police officers that they are dealing with a lot of people with mental health issues. The police are not able to diagnose that somebody is mentally ill. So what they do, if somebody's behaving irrationally or dangerously, causing a danger to themselves or the public, they arrest that person, bring them to a place of safety, which is the accident and emergency. They don't take them into custody. And they bring them to the accident and emergency department. Then the police wait until a properly qualified medical person can come and make a judgment.
Is that quite a new way of dealing?
This has been happening for a long time. Merseyside is one of the first areas to refuse to use police custody suites for people who have got mental illness. The problem is that we've found that the mental health services in particular, which is where the expertise is, have been so stretched that they haven't been able to get to the A&E department and make a judgment about the individual. So the police have to wait, sometimes for a long time, hours and hours, with this person to make sure that they don't harm themselves or the public, or leave. Sometimes when they've calmed down, what you don't want to happen is for them to leave before they've been properly assessed. So the police will stay and help the A&E department work with this person, but it ties up a lot of people. And we also take the view that the A&E is probably not the best place. So we're working with the health service now to determine what would be the best place, and we're looking to see whether they can't provide a better one.
Maybe there are GPs who are, not necessarily mental health experts, but they probably got a qualification in mental health, who may be more accessible than getting someone from a hospital.
That's potentially exactly right, and that's why we need to work with them. So having met the health professionals, Dr. Nadeem Fazlani is the chair of the clinical commissioning group here in Liverpool. He's been very helpful and supportive and very anxious, because what we all agree is, at that moment in time, the person who we need to really have the focus on is the individual. If they are mentally ill, that's the person who's got to be at the centre of our concern. If they are a danger to themselves or the public, that danger has got to be addressed. Once that's been addressed, what can we, that individual is the one we've got to focus on.
Yeah. It's a very difficult one. I think it's probably been a lame dock area for a long time.
Causing problems.
And particularly,